What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Backfire. This is the Sig Cross. I reviewed it a year ago and it was a very popular review because it's such an interesting, unique gun, and we're going to talk about what makes this gun so unique. But over the last year, I've learned a lot of things about this gun, and I'll say two things right off the bat. First of all, this has been my #1 most used rifle over the last year. That's really saying something because I either own or have owned most of the production hunting rifles in existence. The second claim I'll make about this gun is this is a legitimate half-inch gun. And I don't say that lightly. I know you're going to want evidence, and so I'll show it to you. All right, let's jump to the accuracy. I wanted to have some fresh results to show you guys actually what it's shooting. I'm going to show you every single group that I shot yesterday with this gun. This is in 12-mile-an-hour wind at 100 yards at a bench rest. So I shot a Barnes LRX and it did okay, a little bit under an inch. Kind of a custom ammo is Alpha Munitions, and it just didn't do very well in this. Then I shot some kind of surplus 6.5 Creedmoor ammo, and it did not perform very well. And then we started getting into hand loads. Whoop, the groups got tiny. For some reason I only shot a 2-shot group there. I must have lost count. But I shot more hand loads. And even more hand loads. I'm showing you guys every single group. These are not cherry-picked at all. These are just tiny little groups that this thing is printing. So on average, this is looking at all of the groups of these hand loads, the average group size was 0.56 inches. 0.56! So half MOA is 0.5235, right? So there were 4/100ths of an inch above a half MOA gun. I'll call that half MOA. That is incredibly impressive. That is a unicorn. I've tested, again, just about every production hunting rifle out there, and I can tell you that is very rare. Now, I know what some of you are saying. Wait a minute, some of those groups weren't that good, and then we got into the hand loads and it started doing better. That is what you should know about the accuracy of this gun. I believe it's because of the very short 18-inch barrel in 6.5 Creedmoor or 16-inch barrel with 308 that it becomes ammo picky. Because the nodes then are compressed, right? And so I think that's what makes this gun ammo picky. I've read reviews from several other people that also said, oh, you know, it didn't like several loads, but then when you get the one it likes, wow, it's incredibly impressive, and that's what I saw. So the hand loads that I've used, if CommieTube would allow me, I could just show you my load recipe, but CommieTube does not allow it. They think you should not know anything about guns, pretend they don't exist. I digress. Those hand loads are not developed for this gun. That's just Jim's 6.5 Creedmoor. That's just me making essentially factory ammo, just a generic 6.5 Creedmoor load and chucking it in here. It happened to just do incredibly well. It's just a magic load for this gun, but I haven't even done any load development that I probably could improve it. I also did a very hot barrel test. I mean, this thing was steaming off the suppressor and stuff to see how it handles a hot barrel, and man, it just still shoots really well. Up next is velocity. So velocity is kind of an awkward thing to talk about when you're reviewing a rifle, but here it's relevant because, again, they've chosen very short barrel lengths here. It's going to impact your velocity. So traditionally, 6.5 Creedmoor is in a 22, sometimes a 24-inch barrel. They have it here in an 18. I wasn't so sure how that would actually perform. What I have found is in a hand load, again, not really developed for this, but a little bit of a warm hand load, I'm getting velocities of 2,688 feet per second with a 143 ELDX. So really, that's pretty normal for a 6.5 Creedmoor. And so if you're hand loading, it's really not that big of a deal. Yes, you are losing some velocity from what you could accomplish, but you can at least push it to the point of normal 6.5 Creedmoor velocities. Out of factory ammo, In general, I would say take 125 feet per second off of what the box says and you're probably in the ballpark. All right, so what is the Sig Cross and why is there so much buzz about this gun? It really takes the traditional hunting rifle and it fixes a lot of problems. First, we have an adjustable cheek piece that you have just this simple lever right here that will now, this is spring loaded, so you put the rifle to where you can perfectly see through the scope, and then you just swing that lever over and it locks that in place. Then it has a length of pull adjustment. Then it removes one of the biggest problems with relatively inexpensive rifles, and that is the forend. So on the forend of the stock, we get a lot of problems with bedding where a rifle is not well bedded and the barrel makes contact with the stock differently between shots, which can cause problems with accuracy. Other issues that we see in the forend is when you attach a bipod, it can drive the stock more into barrel than it would normally, causing more accuracy issues. This just removes that entirely. Nothing touches the barrel. You can see the silver barrel in there and just a handguard around it, kind of like you would see in an AR. Then, the most unique thing about this gun is some people are seeing this in the gun store and they think it's an AR because it kind of looks like an AR. It's not an AR. This is a traditional bolt action hunting rifle. You can see the bolt. It's not a semi. And then you don't see a normal receiver, so we have the action here. The receiver is this lower part that connects into the stock. Well, look, it's just one big piece right here. The one piece receiver makes up kind of the body section of this gun, and then you just have the bolt that goes into it. That solves so many issues and provides a really solid platform for everything else attaching to the gun. It uses AICS pattern magazines, and they've done a marvelous job with feeding that we're going to talk about in a minute. Trigger quality. So this has a two-stage trigger. I am a sucker for a two-stage trigger. I love them. So the first stage, you'll see just the take-up. I've already checked this gun for clear. You have that take-up, and then you hit a wall, and then the gun breaks. The take-up goes to about 1 pound and 10 ounces. You'll feel that take-up, and then from 1 pound 10 ounces to 3 pounds, at 3 pounds is where it's going to break. 3 pounds might sound a little heavier than what most people like on a precision rifle, but when you have it in a two-stage, it feels really light, but it also feels like you know exactly when the trigger's going to go off. It's A+ for me. I love the trigger. I wish more manufacturers would embrace the two-stage. Cartridge availability is maybe the biggest con for the Sig Cross. You got three options. You got 308 in a 16-inch barrel. You have 6.5 Creedmoor, which is what I have here. And very, very soon, you'll have 277 Sig Fury, which Sig developed for a military contract, but is also making commercially available. When I originally recorded this, I forgot to include this. They are actually working on a long-action version of the Cross right now. My question is, how is it going to do with recoil? Because if you look at this butt pad, we have a very easy, small compression zone, which is probably good for a light 6.5 Creedmoor. I can't see that doing well with a 300 Win Mag. You'd get very little. This looks like it's a rubber section, but it feels like that's actually hard plastic under there, just covered up with a little layer. So really, it's just this. That's your butt pad. I just don't think this would handle a heavy recoiling cartridge well. I hope they would update that. Sig partnered with the Born and Raised Outdoors YouTube channel, awesome channel, and they made a custom edition of this that I've played with one actually at one of the shows, and it's awesome. Has a long barrel. They do kind of a different a tungsten Cerakote on a lot of the metal. Has a little piece here, kind of a carrying spot, so that when it's cold, you aren't holding on to just the metal of it. And the big one, it has an Arca rail at the bottom here. Also to note, there are carbon barrels that you can use on the Sig Cross. The gun isn't perfect though. I have had some issues with it this year. The first one, I'll have to get a close-up video to kind of show here, but it appears that there's some kind of very light rust on the outside of the silver of the barrel. Now, every time I mention that, I hate it in the comments. People are always like, "You're not maintaining your gun." I have a lot of guns and they don't rust. And so when I get any rust on some of them, it's notable. Also because trying to get some oil down there would be very, very difficult with this handguard over the top of it. You'd have to disassemble the gun in order to maintain that. And so that does seem a problem. It is very, very light, but it's something to note. The second thing is the safety selector switch. So when I used this gun a year ago, I was having no issues with the safety selector switch, and other people were in their reviews. I tried it 100 times, everything was working perfectly. My gun also developed the issue. The problem is when you switch from safe or from fire to safe, see how the selector switch kind of paused between spots here? So I flip it and it's between, and then it's actually to safe. So I talked to Sig Sauer about this and they said, we're not really worried about it because when it's kind of in that half position, it is actually safe. It just hasn't quite cammed over. That's totally not acceptable to me. Totally not acceptable. A gun that isn't absolutely crystal clear what mode it's in, fire or safe, is a dangerous gun and you need to fix it. It's frustrating, I guess, especially when they've created an absolute knockout of a gun. I mean, this thing is awesome. I mean, you wonder why this is my #1 most used gun over the last year. It's because every time when I just want to go shoot, I say, well, I could go get that traditional hunting rifle and I'm going to be hovering above because the cheek piece is never high enough on those rifles. It's going to be long, and I've found that it's not just about backpacking. Certainly is when you're hunting and you're throwing this in a backpack and you can fold up this stock and it's tiny. It doesn't even poke out of the backpack sometimes. It's so tiny, so it's nice for that. But even when you're just chucking this in the truck, it's nice that it just doesn't extend the full length of your bench in the second row of your truck. It's just so tiny and easy to pack around. It's actually not that light. It's just over 6 pounds when you look at the numbers, but it just feels so light because it's short. You know, it's like if you're holding a 5-pound weight here, not that bad, but if you had to have it at the end of a 10-foot pole, it would feel really heavy, right? And so when it's compressed like this, it feels light in your hand. And so, man, all of that adds up to be the reasons that I just want to shoot this every single time. Not to mention, the feeding is absolute perfection. I have never once in a year had a problem coming from this magazine into the chamber every single time. It's not one of those guns where you have to pull it back. Look, did we pull a bullet and push it in? It goes every single time. Because we have a box mag, we get 5 rounds here plus 1 in the chamber. That's much better than what we're going to see in most hunting rifles. People are, not sure if they like a magazine or bottom metal. I like them both, but man, having that capacity is nice, especially when we're just taking this to the range and not hunting. One complaint I have in the design is folding the stock is just cumbersome. It has just a button that you press here, but you have to lift up and go over, and it just requires quite a bit of force. I find myself pushing on the scope to get it down to go. I think that could have used a better design. It does lock forward here, and then kind of the same thing. We've got to lift it up to bring it back. It's gotten a little bit better over the year, but it just needs a better design. So now you've seen the pros and the cons of the Sig Cross. As many tiny little things kind of bother me about this that I would love to see an update from Sig Sauer. When it comes down to it, I say, but it is the gun that I reached for more than any other out of my closet this year. And number 2, when it's shooting half minute without even any load development, I'll take that any day of the week. The Sig Cross is one of the best hunting rifles on the market.